problem in your deficiency in money. You are so rich. Even if I did not give the money back to you, it's not going to decrease your wealth. And I was in need. You, from your compassion, because you're a compassionate human being, gave me, okay, fine, give me your money back, 1 year later. But demanding give me on top of that another £50,000, that's greed. Interest is actually this, where you charge extra based on this greed. So in Islam it's absolutely forbidden. In Judaism, you cannot charge interest to another Jew, but to a non-Jew you can. Do you see where the problem starts? Because when you treat people differently with this kind of things, this is where I'm saying in the past, the scripture eventually gets corrupted like this, where people have moving away from the real essence of the message that God gave for everyone, and you have it for your own self, your own tribe, your own family, and for everyone else that's different. So as time went by, people changed this message, and then they introduced the ideas of different things, and that's why you have so many different religions. But if you were to really deeply ponder on the roots of the religion, even in Hinduism that we talked about right now, that they are polytheistic. If you go to the scripture, it says, Ekang Ishar Dityanasti. There is one God and not two. It's there, it's still there. It's still something that you can decipher, and you can actually, what's this called? Extract from this, layers and layers of distortion. There is this core message that there's only one God. So polytheism or multiple belief system arose because people went away from the original message of God and they corrupted it. God, our creator, he isn't someone who just leaves people astray and do whatever he wants. He sends another prophet and another messenger, even to the same nation. That's why we are told in the Quran that God does not punish anyone, meaning he doesn't require anyone of what they're doing until and unless he sends a prophet or a messenger. Because that's only just. Imagine now the police comes along just over there and says, puts handcuff on, arrest, you have committed the crime, punishable by death because you were speaking in Speaker's Corner. They can't do that because there is no law preceding this. If there was a law, they have to make it clear that speaking in Speaker's Corner is a crime punishable by death. We were not aware of it. They didn't make it known. So God does not account people for what they do until he tells them what they're supposed to do. That's why the prophets and messengers comes and tells us, this is what you should do. Be good and kind and compassionate and merciful and just. Don't be greedy, don't deceive, don't cheat, don't lie, don't rape, don't murder. The do's and don'ts. And many of these do's and don'ts, as you alluded to earlier, is something that is common to everyone. Why? Because that was the message that God sent to everyone. It's still there. It's still there.
So can I just say, so what we were talking about is, so we were saying that, because the guy over here was saying, he was talking about
Christianity.
Christianity and why
they are wrong.
Yeah, they're wrong and I'm right, basically. So what I was saying is, so you're talking about all creationism and God and stuff.
Yeah.
The thing is, no one. We can say everyone has their own opinion and stuff, but no one knows for a fact.
That's what I.
No one knows for a fact what is the truth of creation, because this has happened where people living today. This has happened so many years ago. No one knows this for a fact. So for all these people, they're just following their beliefs and their religion, and they're following
their truth.
They're following their truth based on what's happened to them in their life and what's like the impacts of the world.
So basically saying, how do we know it's the truth? How do we know what's the truth?
Not necessarily. I'm just saying for the gentleman over here that was talking about, I'm wrong, you're right, my religion is wrong, your religion is right. I personally think that's something that shouldn't be done, because religion, as all base religions, yes, like as you said, like people misinterpret stuff and try to twist religions and use it in bad ways and stuff, but at their base and at their foundation, all the purpose of all religions is good and is to help people live a better life and help people do good. So I personally think you shouldn't tell someone I'm right and you're wrong. Just, do you know what I mean? Like,
just to address this point, yeah. So it seems logical in a way what you said, but we need to think, deeply enough. And this is what Islam demands us to be critical thinkers, deep reflection on our own self, on our universe around us, and then we will easy for us to come to the right conclusions. So, as I said, the Islamic model or the understanding of religion is this: there has always been one way of life acceptable to God, only one way, and that has been from the very beginning to the very last of the Prophet and Messenger. What has happened throughout this time is people have changed it into different forms. So our role of the mind is to find out the uncorrupted form, if it exists, which we say it does, from the corruption. So what are the signs of corruption is what we should be asking. Okay? So there are various ways of looking at it. You can study every single religion, which are monotheistic, or you can start with one and go one by other, depending on how much time you have. Okay? So when people say we have no right to judge others, that's true, but we still have to decipher the truth from all this around us. And there can only be one truth, not conflicting truth. If God is one, think about it. Okay? If God is one, and He alone is to be thanked for, to be glorified and praised, that's worshipping, yeah? And then in one religion it says, I have a son, worship him too. Or I have a wife, worship her too. Or if you worship my wife or my daughter or my son, I'm going to put you into hellfire forever and forever. And another religion...
Wasn't so you said about like prophets and stuff, you should only follow if there's a prophet.
So
isn't Jesus...
In Islam, Jesus is a prophet.
And in Christianity, what?
He is Son of God.
By the way,
God.
I'm not a practicing Christian, so I don't know all my
We can all learn from each other. That's the whole idea. So, in Christianity, he's considered to be a son of God and elevated also to God. Okay, that's why many people, they will not say he's son of God, they will say he's God. If you press them too hard, he says he's son of God, and there is a father of God. Okay, God the Father.
He's the human form.
He's God in flesh, they say.
He's just bringing
God in flesh.
They say he's God in flesh. Okay, so we will just address this point, but at least we have an understanding that there's ways of finding out the truth, because if there are conflicting concept of God, you know very well and you know very well, they cannot all be the truth. God has a son, you should worship him too, and God has no son. If you worship God having a son, you're going to go to hell. Two different contrasting concept and message. They both cannot be true. They're mutually exclusive. So that's why we need to understand how do we then filter this. Okay? One way of this is by looking at the very concept itself of God, and also the revelation, because the revelation of God, or the scripture, the book that God sends to guide people, because how did God guide people throughout times? The various levels of guidance. In our understanding, God guides people even without sending prophet and messengers by the intellect, by showing them guidance within themselves. Okay? To give you an example, imagine there is an idol worshipper who has made a statue, an idol of some kind, and is meditating and worshipping that God, or worshipping God through the statue. During that meditation, a dog came, lifted one of his legs and urinated on the idol, and it broke the meditation of the worshipper, the individual. And he said, how could this dog do that? He started trying to grab this dog to punish it. The dog started running. He ran after the dog. As he was running after the dog, it clicked suddenly on his head. Hang on. If I am worshipping a God who can't even stop himself from defiling by a dog, I'm worshipping a God who cannot even protect itself from defilement, being urinated upon. How can that even be God?
But the thing is, animals, humans, we all have free will. So I think you're...
No, I'm not talking about the animal. I'm talking about, he's thinking about God.
Yeah.
The God he's worshipping has no power itself, an idol, to be protected from urination by a dog. That click, that spark was the guidance for that individual, that gentleman or woman. Because that point, he should have realized that this is not God, cannot be God. I'm worshipping the wrong understanding of God. God cannot be my idol that I've
God is all
formulated.
powerful.
Exactly. So you see, there was no book, there was no prophet or a messenger was needed. God can directly, guide people to these kind of moments in life. God also gives us a foolproof method of guidance. And that is through raising up a prophet or a messenger from among the people who they know to be trustworthy, truthful, righteous, upright, sincere, so that when this individual brings them the guidance, they are easy to accept it. They are ready to accept it. Imagine, I am the most wicked person, the bad person. Like you have seen me killing, plundering, cheating, lying, all this, and then I come to give you an advice, be nice, don't cheat. You'll say, get lost, get away. I mean, you don't even practice it yourself, and you tell me. That is why all the prophets and messengers, when they came, people, their objection was like, how can God send a man to guidance? But they didn't just reject this individual, because that individual they know was someone who's trustworthy, reliable, truthful, upright. So our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the nicknames that he has is Sadiq al-Amin, the truthful, trustworthy individual. People will no doubt accept whatever he says. So even if he said, in fact, at one point during his call, when he was commissioned by God to be a prophet, you see, he didn't make himself. God made him a prophet when he was like at the age of 40. So he went into one of the hills. This is one way of them bringing their attention. And then he would shout, all people like, Ya Sabaha or this, or this community, and people will realize something very important thing is happening. They will all leave their job, their work, their studies, whatever, and they go there and find out what's wrong, what's happening, because it's a community, what's this called? Call where the community is in danger, maybe some kind. So he says, look, if I told you, behind me, behind the mountain, there's an army waiting to attack you, would you believe me? They said, yes, we believe you. We know of you of not lying ever at all. We have never seen you lying. We believe you, accept you. We will accept what you say. So that was their testimony. Then they say, okay, then God has made me a prophet. Accept that there's no one worthy of worship God. Reject your false deities. Worship God alone. And they said, oh no, we're not going to do that, because there's a different reason why. Because their worship of the deities was also a political, financial interest. Their finance and politics was vested in their worship of different deities that they made, because there was a lot of income and prestige and status was involved with it. Not because they realized there's only one God. They knew there was only one God, but they didn't succumb or conform to this belief. So God sends, coming back to the point, prophets and messengers, the guide, were trustworthy, reliable, upright persons. And when they come with the guidance, people are already receptive. And when the guidance is presented to them, it has its own evidence. Otherwise, anyone can believe in anything, right? So the evidence is within the guidance itself that is brought. So if we consider the concept of God in one hand, we can filter what is acceptable and what is not. If we look at the guidance itself, we can be rest assured with certainty that this is what we're supposed to believe and follow who it is. Because the revelation will bring a stop to our speculation, intellectual speculation. Because when we think about other things, we're speculating intellectually, right? So imagine now, this is something I recently was reading up on, let's say, how they actually justify this. A concept of God where there are these gopis. These are like cowgirls between the age of, say, 12 to 14 or 17, teenage young girls. They're having within their tradition bath in the banks of Ganges or Ganga or Yamuna. Actually it's Jamuna. This is in India. So you know the story is where it may be coming from. And they're only allowed to bathe there, and no man can bathe there. This is the tradition. So a specific isolated place only for women. So they bathe naked, because between themselves this is tradition. They left their clothes on the shore. God, called Krishna, or one of the forms of God, or avatar, or whatever they want to call him, he comes along and he takes the clothes, he goes up to a tree with the clothes, and he started watching and enjoying. sooner or later they've noticed someone's watching them, and they then demanded, what are you doing here? It's not something that they gave permission to, consent to. Give our clothes back. He says no. Come individually, one by one, from the water, naked. Then I'll give your clothes back. They're trying to give a lot of reasons in terms of how these people are worshipping him in the first place, wanted to be the wife of this individual god, and that's why it's okay. But if you look at it, he is asking for this naked girl to come open because he wants to enjoy their beauty, their nakedness. And the poor girls, think about it, does not click to you that this is God Almighty, the one who's just, the one who's pure, the one who demands purity? To me, I'm sorry, I have to disagree with these Hindu traditions. However, you depict that this is actually like some kind of symbolism. No,
So,
I mean,
I agree. Like,
so that concept of God.
It's fair enough if you're like singling out certain ideas and certain arguments. Or
You're filtering them. You're filtering them
from a religion. So that I believe in.
because your heart and mind has been equipped with certain ways to filter, which is something not believable, to something which your heart and mind would be finely tuned with it,
I
right?
believe that is a good thing.
Good.
But
So
what I do think is that, so that's what my point is. I think religions are very broad, and there's so many ideas and so many opinions.
But take it to the conclusion.
So many, I will. There's so many like ideas from the religious books that you can apply it to modern day life and stuff. But I think that's what my point was.
I'm talking about the concept of God.
Religion as a whole and the idea as a whole of the religion and the person's intent in following this religion is good. So I feel like I shouldn't tell someone to. So if you're both Muslims, I shouldn't tell you because I don't believe in. Because I don't follow a certain religion, I shouldn't tell you
that it's wrong.
But that's the point we're discussing. At this point, we're not going to judge anything.
Because of little differing.
But do you follow one thing?
ideas.
We're not judging any
No,
religion
of course
at
not.
all.
Of course
What
not.
we're doing is
I'm
we are trying to filter the true and the right and the correct concept by using your mind alone or using the revelation. So you've heard about the Christians talking about God, right? Let's briefly touch upon this concept. You have a God who has a son, who comes down, who's supposed to be all knowledgeable, and he says, I don't know the hour. You will see this is one of the things that we ask our Christian friends most of the time. How do you explain this? How do you justify believing in it? If you are all knowledgeable, think about it. If you are all wise and all knowledgeable from eternity to eternity, meaning you know the past, the present, and the future already. What's your name?
Owen.
Owen. Now, imagine I know Owen, this name, and I don't forget. I will always know this name, because I am all knowledgeable. Then I go to place over there, and then I don't know your name anymore. Is that possible while I'm supposed to be all knowledgeable? Doesn't matter where I go. If I am all knowledgeable all the time, I will always know your name. So what they're saying, God sent his son, who is also God. He came down on earth, took a human body. He doesn't know everything. I would say that doesn't make any sense. Because if you are all knowledgeable to begin with, you will always be all knowledgeable. You cannot be less than all knowledgeable. You cannot be. Because you know the future already. There's nothing more to know. You know it already. Then how can you not know it? Unless you forget. And that is an imperfection, a deficiency in a concept of God. God is a perfect being with his attributes. If he has knowledge, it's a perfect knowledge. So 100% all knowledge, not 5%. And 90% knowledge and 10% ignorance. It doesn't count. So just this one example will tell you there's something definitely wrong with this belief system. Somewhere something went wrong. That is why we say Christ, he came to tell people to worship God, his God, and of course he's not all knowledgeable because he's a creation of God. The creation of God, you, me, and everything else, is not all knowledgeable. All wise, all knowledgeable attribute only belongs to the one absolute being, that is God. Okay? So when we filter, we can arrive at the correct conclusion. Okay? And if you look at the concept presented in the books, if it doesn't get in line with your heart and your mind, there's something wrong with it. Because God who created you knowing that what you are capable of accepting and capable of rejecting. He cannot force you to a book which says God is half elephant and half man as a result of chopping the heads off the man's head, Ganesh, and then the only thing that's the story I have to tell you again very briefly. There was this god, he has a wife, goddess, and he has a son, right? He puts his son on the guard in front of the door, so no one goes inside, you know. So wife is there, right? Whatever reason, okay, let's say just okay, protect the family. For whatever reason, he didn't do that. He became angry. God, the husband God or the father God became angry. He chopped off the head of his son. And then he eventually realized, because what have I done? I've killed my own son, chopped my own son. So he looked around, saw an elephant, chopped off the head of the elephant, put the elephant's head on the half decapitated body, and now you have an elephant head and a human body. His name is Ganesh. If you ever go to East London or Wembley, Middlesex, and go to a jewelry shop, he's the god of economics. To the Hindus, they worship this Ganesh. You will see elephant with the trunk, but he's got a belly and a human body. But you will ask yourself, what kind of concept of God is that? It doesn't get tuned with your heart and your mind. So what we're saying is a concept of God which you and I are seeking to find the truth must make sense to you. Now let me give you an example. And you tell me honestly. This is from the Quran, right? A book that we believe in. So I'll show you from the English translation. It's only 4 lines. A small surah. A surah is like a chapter in the Quran. And the Quran is composed of 114 surahs as a whole book. And this chapter is called chapter of Ikhlas or purity. It presents to us the concept of God in a nutshell. And see if your heart and your mind is finally in tune with it, or your heart and your mind says averse to it. It's not for me. Yeah? Think about it, because the true concept of God from God through his revelation must make sense about him. Say he is Allah, the one. Allah, the eternal refuge, the one who is without father, mother, individual. Basically, he is absolute. What footnote is that?
Read it
Here.
out.
He is absolute, perfect. That's what it means, the Arabic word. So, absolute, independent. He neither begets nor is born, meaning he's not someone who gives birth to or produces any other. Neither himself is a product of someone else, a parents or lineage. Nor is there to him any equivalent or likeness or comparison. So it's one and only, unique, absolute, independent, perfect. Everything relies on him, depends on him, he depends on no one. He is not born, doesn't produce offsprings or children, and there is nothing co-equal or like him in any way, shape or form. Consult your heart and your mind. Does this concept of God make sense to you? There is one absolute being. Has to be one. Has to be one.
Why do they say it's a him?
No, this is just in Arabic language. They have to use the language. This is how God described himself. You can use he, she. There is no it in Arabic language. So God tells us he's not a man or a woman. In fact, he created both. He is not a gender. This is just a language where the Arabs have used in customary to describe God to be someone who is free from any gender. So if God used she, you can, because there's only 2 gender pronouns rather in Arabic language, one can ask, is God a female? Same question can ask. So what are you going to use? There is no, either he or she, that's what you're going to use. So Arabs say the sun is one gender, moon is one gender in terms of how you say it.
Yeah, it's just
You know, when you say, okay, I went to a ship and she was beautiful. A ship, using a feminine attribute. My country is England, she is beautiful. She's not feminine. You see, when we use pronouns, customary use is not because something is a male or a female.
Personified.
Yeah, it's not because something is a male and female. A ship is not a female, neither is a country. But we just give the pronouns because that's what we are. In English, you have another one called neuter gender, called it. In Arabic, no. So God chose the masculine gender, but he says clearly he's not a man or a woman. And I think he's the creator of all things.
Why did he choose the masculine?
You can ask the same question, why did he not choose the feminine? And he will say, why did he choose the feminine? So the Arabs...
Yeah, but is there an answer to my question?
Yeah, because in the understanding where feminine gender was considered to be someone who is very gentle, very kind and compassionate, someone like, receptive and so on. God is saying, no, he's the creator. He's the one who also punishes. He's merciful, but he also punishes. It is not within the, say, makeup of a woman to punish. To punish someone. So the Arab mind, this is my humble understanding, will be in conflict. God is like describing with a she, and he's saying he's going to destroy us. I mean, come on. It cannot be. God cannot punish if you describe him with a she attribute. So this is just a.
But that's how you see women.
No. I'm saying this is the understanding of a linguistic tradition at that time. But when God then tells you that he is not anything, there's nothing like unto him. There is nothing like unto him. He's not a man or a woman or of any kind. Anything that you can imagine is not God. So if he was one,
basically they're saying that he's not a man or a woman. He's not. But that's just
That's just the way in which they put
because
into words.
the other option is not using any pronouns at all, only using noun. But in language, if I keep using nouns without a pronoun, you will see how difficult it gets. That's the reason why we have pronouns. We say he, she, it, they, we, us, rather than just by names, individuals. We resort to now pronouns for a reason. So when pronouns are used, it is not because he's a male gender. Quran absolutely says no. So God, now see how it feels if I use this, okay, for the clarity then. God is one and only, because God is one and only, God has to be absolute. If God is one and only and absolute, he cannot be born, because there will be someone else who is born from. Then he will be dependent on someone else. If he also gives birth or produces something, then there's something like God. So if God is one and only and absolute and independent, not born, doesn't give birth, can there be any likeness to God in any way, shape or form? There cannot be. So this concept of God, if you deeply reflect, your heart and your mind will say, yes, I can accept that. This is how, if I were to believe in God, that's what God should be. That's how God should be like.
Why? As I said, no one really knows for a fact
Let's address that point.
What God is and how
What makes you believe in the Quran?
Okay, so let's address this point.
Why can't I believe that this idea of God is not right, and why can't I believe? Because
you have to give your reasons.
I feel like you're not. No, because I feel like you're sometimes you're discounting the impact of the world and all the things that happen in the world on people's opinions.
Give Owen, put an alternative concept of God, and let's discuss this too in comparison to this.
You said it to me. You said God is energy. Do you remember when we spoke? You said I believe God is just an energy around us, and we're just atoms within it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I kind of have it. I don't. That's the thing. I don't have a specific and what's the word? Haven't decided on a complete
It's just
idea
an intuition,
of what
it's a feeling, and you can't describe it. You don't
I-
have
but
that.
But if you were to take
You
it,
were talking before, like you said, if you believe in God, you just feel that that's right. Like this is the right way. You just feel it's in
Okay,
your heart. You
so-
don't really have a reason for it, and that's the same.
do you realise you're not far off the Muslim narrative by saying energy? You're not that far off.
let's talk about this energy. This energy, we say God possesses energy, and you say God is energy. The difference at the moment. This energy has to be either conscious, self-aware, or not conscious and not self-aware. That's the two options. If you say this energy is not conscious, not self-aware, then this energy cannot bring about anything, cannot do anything.
don't think it has. I think like the energy is everything, everything.
Yeah.
Like it's infinity. It's us. It's
Sure.
not conscious. It is conscious. It's like it's everything, and it
see-
can't really be
You see,
described.
in our world,
Yeah,
changes happen constantly, transformation from one form to the other, matter energy into conversion, one form to the other, how things like, how human beings start from a baby and grow older and older and older, and eventually we die, and that's it. There's a process of change and transformation. This process is either directed, willed, or it just happens by itself through this energy. Either the energy is directing it to happen because it's self-aware, it has a goal or a direction or a plan, or it just happens without it knowing or interfering, it just happens. Now, which one makes more sense is the question. Let me give you an example to illustrate my point further. Imagine there is a kitchen where you cook. Do you cook?
sometimes.
Sometimes. Now,
Well,
so he finds your kitchen, he comes to the kitchen, and he sees everything's there. There's a cooker, there's a lighter to light the cooker, the gas cooker. There's a fridge, he opens it, there's milk, there's a cupboard on the shelf, and there's tea in tea bags, and there are cups and plates, and there's water in the sink. And he says, okay, I want a cup of tea with, how many sugars do you like?
2 sugars.
2 sugars. And he waits there. He waits and he waits. You, the willing agent, the one who transforms, the one who directs, the one who changes, the one who brings about, yeah? You're not there, okay? You're just watching. He waits and waits and waits. Days goes by, months goes by, years goes by, eons goes by, eons. His tea doesn't get produced. Why so? Because there is no willing agent to will to bring all of this together to make tea. Because a conscious agent needs to will this to happen. He's intending it, he wants it, but there's no one else doing it for you. Because you are the chef, for example, you're the cook, you're not bringing them together, you haven't willed it. This tea will never happen. Doesn't matter, you sit there for infinity. You need a conscious, willing agent to bring all this element. Open the fridge door, bring the milk out, untap sink, the water in the kettle, put it in the cooker, light the cooker, the gas flames, boils, bring the tea bags. All of these requires conscious processes by a will. If you believe in an energy, which is in control of this universe or not in control of the universe, then without consciousness and will, nothing will happen. It will be like just energy, but no transformation. The fact that we have transformation happening and changes happening tells us that there is a controller, a mover, a director, an organizer. And that's where we say this organizer is what we say God, who possesses, the creator who possesses this energy. Yes, the creator is not without energy, he possesses the energy. He creates. Yeah? So the difference is subtle, but it's quite important. The energy and the creator, the difference being someone or something that is self-aware, conscious, and has a will. So we say the creator created us with a will for a reason. Our fingerprints testify that we are created for a reason, because it's all unique. If it was just by pure chance and coincidence, 2 fingerprints should be the same by coincidence. We have established forensic science, where we use this as evidence. If the fingerprints match, it doesn't match with someone else's, because our fingerprints are unique. And God actually refers to this, people who reflect and think, do you really think that when you are dead and you're rotten, some people say, when you die, when you're dead, that's it? He will not bring you back, he's not going to gather you back together? He says, no, certainly he will. Certainly he will, even to the very tips of your fingers. Maybe nothing special about it. Maybe there is something special about the tips of the fingers. Okay? God alludes to this point, and we know why, because it's very unique. He will bring you back again to the second life. Yep, again. As unique as you were, he can bring you back again, no problem. Because God says He created you first time, He will create you again. Is it difficult? If He creates you first time, He has all this blueprint. If you make something first time, is it difficult or easier to make something like it again? Easier. That's what God tells us to think. If you are created again, why do you then say that there is no afterlife? When you die and that's it? No. There will be justice. There will be a day of judgment where the bad and the wicked don't get away. They will be accountable for what they have done. And the good people, like yourself, the good people will be rewarded for their good. But the wicked people will have their justice seen. They may be punished for what they have done. Yeah? And this is what justice demands, punishment for the people who have done something evil. Imagine someone who is a serial rapist, killer, child molester, ethnic cleansing, whatever, right? And he gets away, lives like a king, dies like a king.
So
where is the justice?
What do you, how would you, what is the line for that justice, would you say? So you named like a rapist, is someone that doesn't follow a lot of the stuff in the Quran?
I got your question. So justice means, again, you will be accountable for your actions. The actions have to be told to you first, which ones are acceptable and which ones not. Otherwise, it's meaningless to go and suddenly say, I'm going to punish you for that when you didn't know whether they're acceptable actions or not.
So say someone's raised without much of they're raised without parents, they don't have anyone instilling...
To tell them right
from wrong, instilling a religion like a lot of like good Muslims and good Christians do, and say they sin in their life, how would you say that person will be punished?
God, of course, is ultimately the judge and the arbiter, an arbitrator in terms of settling the dispute, and He is the owner and the master of the Day of Judgment. He will judge justly. No one will be unjustly treated. That means if an individual, let me give you an extreme. If an individual were somewhere in a
Aborigines or something.
somewhere, in like an Eskimo individual, there's only a few people, and no prophet and messenger came, and they lived. There's no guidance, no book, and the only tools they have is the intellect. They will be only judged as per the use of the intellect. They cannot be judged otherwise, like, oh, why didn't you do this when you do that? Because they didn't even know what to do. Okay, that is why in one of the chapters in the Quran, God clarifies this position. That this is called. It's interesting because this is a question people often have. This is in Surah Al-Mulk. I'll show you this. It's very interesting.
I asked this question when I was 10.
Yeah, look.
I asked this question when I was 10.
It's like, say someone was taught bad, or that say they were brought up with a father or a mother that was just someone that was like immoral and didn't really have a good grasp of right and wrong.
Here.
If they're taught wrong their whole life, what are they?
So, I'm just reading the relevant parts, right? So there are some people who will be deserving to go to a punishment because of their actions and belief. So he's describing those individuals. And for those who disbelieved in their Lord is the punishment of hell, and
Disbelieve, what does that mean?
they disbelieve, didn't believe.
Don't believe in God.
No. Disbelieve in the Lord, meaning didn't believe in the Creator with all His attributes, and didn't believe in the laws or the guidance that the Creator sent. But it has to be made clear to them, right? Wretched is the destination. When they are thrown into it, meaning the hellfire, they hear from it a dreadful inhaling while it boils up. It's like a fire furnace, like they can feel it, hear it. It almost burns with rage. Every time a company is thrown into it, keepers ask them. So there are gatekeepers of hellfire. Did they not come to you a warner? So even the gatekeeper tells the people, you are now going to go in hellfire. Did no one warn you about the hellfire? Meaning, did you not have this message? What did they say? What they will say? They will say, yes. A warner had come to us, but we denied and said, Allah, this is the name of God, has not sent down anything. You are not but in great error. So they will say, yes, there was a prophet or a messenger or a warner, but we didn't believe in them. We denied them. We rejected them. And we said, God doesn't reveal anything. God doesn't send any prophets and messengers. God doesn't send any scripture or any guidance. God doesn't send anything. You are in plain error. A lot of people say that. And they will then say, if only we had been listening or reasoning, we would not be among the companions of the blaze.
Yeah, so
If we listened and we heard the prophets and the messengers, or we were reasoning, using our intellect, we would not have ended in this place. This is the role of the intellect God had given us to use. If you use your intellect, you would not worship a tripod. You would not worship a tree. You would not worship a tree or a half elephant and a half man. You would not. Using the intellect properly and in sound way, you would not worship anything of the creation. The only thing that your intellect will tell you that is worthy of worship is nothing except the creator of this universe, this cosmos. If you use this intellect and no prophet and messenger came and you said, there is a God, I submit and surrender, you already have believed in him, and this is your judgment. He's not going to put you in hellfire because you have arrived to the right conclusion that there is a creator who is one and only and absolute.
So are you saying, so can I just see that quick?
Yeah.
So where it says about, I don't know where it says it, but about a disbeliever.
Yeah, so in Islam, a disbeliever is a kafir. You've probably heard this word, oh, you're a kafir, you're a kafir. A kafir linguistically means someone who covers, a farmer is called a kafir. Why? Because they cover the soil with the earth. Knowing the soil is there, knowing the earth is covering. So there's a knowledge involved in this action. A kafir in Islam, in its technical meaning, someone who knows the truth and then rejects it. So the question that we were discussing, if someone doesn't know the truth, you cannot technically say this person is a kafir.
How can you know the truth for sure? Because what you just said, I feel like is a conflicting interest, because you said God will send a prophet
And a messenger.
A messenger or a prophet to teach you how to live your life.
Yeah.
But you also have your own intellect. You said that your intellect is influenced by God, and your intellect will influence like your beliefs. So say
excuse me, are you? She's focusing, so just
Yeah, no, can I talk to you? She's got a mind about it.
I thought she was listening, but up to you. It's up to you.
Anyway, calm.
Yeah. The reason I say that, there are certain people here in the park, just to introduce you the park dynamics. I come here to tell about Islam and present Islam to people and reason with people about Islam. The lady here, can I finish? Can I finish? You see, she's not even allowing me to speak.
She's got a mind of it. You
I know, but I'm just explaining to the lady who will choose who she wants to speak to. You choose who you want to speak to, no one's gonna do that. Speak to her, but what I'm saying simply, she's a Christian missionary, like we are Islamic, you can call it Muslims, who've come here to share the message of Islam. She's here to share.
Yeah, can I just
My friend Owen, just one second. Excuse me. Do you see the problem?
Carry on the conversation.
She just asked me a question
No.
very quickly, and I just wanted to ask.
Go and ask and then go. Thank you.
No, I'm going to be
Alright, let's
here.
not
Oh, she's going to be here. So that's why I'm saying.
carry on the.
No. That's what I'm saying. So it is not proper
This is
that while you were listening,
It's great.
she is trying to interrupt this discussion and talk about Christianity. By all means, go ahead, right? But we'll talk about another time.
being real.
I'm just showing you how, come on, have your own discussion. Yeah, go ahead.
Let's just carry on the conversation.
Yeah.
No need for
So
any-
Owen.
So
what I'm saying is-
can I just finish because I was making a point?
No, go ahead.
So, I feel like what you're
No,
saying.
up to you. Carry on, please.
I feel like what you're saying there's conflicting interest in.
Which one?
Because you said about we're talking about God will send a messenger. Or a
Prophet, messenger, and
to
using
give-
the intellect as well.
And then you also said that our intellect can be influenced by God. And
No. I said we have to use the intellect. The Quran reprimands us for not using the intellect. The Quran says there are people who worship the idols, and those people say, we've seen our forefathers worshipping the idols. And the Quran says, what if your forefathers were wrong? Are you not going to use your sense? They could be wrong too. You can't just simply say, I was born in a family of people who worship a monkey, and I'm keeping worshiping a monkey. What happened to your intellect? So God constantly wants us to use the faculty of intellect to revive us in the right thinking. But intellect has its limitation.
You say that the intellect tells us one thing and it's the same forever.
No,
The
intellect,
says-
a sound intellect would not contradict God's revelation. Like the example we said about God being all knowledgeable.
How do you define a sound intellect?
Yeah. So the sound intellect, to give an example of a sound intellect, God is all knowledgeable for all the time. Then he comes down and he's ignorant. The sound intellect will tell you all knowledgeable means all time all knowledgeable, not 5 minutes ignorant. But if someone says, I'm using the mind, just because the book says so, I'm going to accept it. It's God became ignorant for 33 years or whatever. That's not the use of a sound intellect. Because you are now leaving the use of the intellect, suppressing it, and then subscribing to what a particular book may say, because you're giving priority to this book and saying, no, this takes priority, even though your mind does understand that there is a contradiction. Yeah? So sound intellect would not contradict God's true revelation. This is one of the principles that you should go by. Because otherwise, you can believe in anything. Like I half elephant, half monkey God, and say, yeah.
Okay, so my intellect. So my intellect is, well, my understanding of what my intellect is just like my logic and you know what
The
I mean?
faculty of your reasoning, yeah?
So I'm not a practicing. I don't practice any religion. I'm not a practicing Muslim or anything like that. So does that mean I'm not? I don't know. It doesn't really.
Well, no. What it means is you.
My intellect tells me that not everything, to not believe everything in these religions. So
your
does
intellect.
That make me a disbeliever, or does that mean I should
If
be-
you use your intellect as you are using, you would know all of these religious ideas and ideologies cannot be all truth.
Yeah.
Yep. So I've already used the intellect. So that means which one is the truth, you need to decipher and filter out. You can use your intellect to filter out, and this was the process that we were showing earlier on in terms of which makes sense or not. Okay, your intellect will then direct you and saying, this doesn't make sense. God is all knowledgeable, not all knowledgeable. God is like a pervert watching naked women having a bath, and so on. So there is this intellect role that you can clearly use, and then say, okay, look, let me now look at this book. Book is something that God supposedly had sent and revealed through the prophets and messengers to guide us to. How does this book tell me about himself and about everything else, right? Does it tell me that I'm created, I'm already doomed? He's created me and I'm already doomed. I'm already guilty. Imagine, you open a bank account and then the next one they tell you, okay, you're in debt, my friend, £1 million. Just feed the debt into your account. You would say, how is that? That is unjust. I've just opened a bank account, it should be blank. Yeah, empty. And then I can put my money in, take my money out. But if you're already guilty, like many religions, I don't want to have to name them anyway. There are many religions who say you are already guilty of a crime that you did not commit. You weren't even there. Someone ate the apple, the fruits.
Do you have an example?
No, we're talking about Adam and Eve, the first parents.
Oh yeah, go on.
They were there in a garden, and they, because of their lapse and weakness, being also deceived in addition by Satan, they fall short of the requirements, and they disobeyed an action of God, a command of God. They ate of this tree, and now a religious tradition, a big religious tradition says, you are all guilty, every one of you. You are going to be punished to death unless someone else, like me, God, die for you. Now I see that, look, this is problematic to the very core, one after the other. Firstly, how can I be guilty of a crime that I didn't commit? I wasn't there. I did not have any involvement. You see, an action has to be done by a willing agent who is also capable. Can you make me guilty for not saving someone being run over by a bus? The only way I can save is having wings and flying over there. How can I be held accountable and guilty and punishable by death because I could not save someone in Brighton? I cannot simply go and fly because I don't have wings or transport myself. So not only that I have to have the will, but I have the capacity and the ability. Eating of the apple I wasn't there. I didn't intend it to happen. I didn't eat it myself. So how can I be guilty of that crime which I didn't commit? That is unjust. It's injustice to the very core. Second point, the only way then I can be saved for a crime that I did not commit, do you know how? It's by the God who created me. He commits suicide. He says, I'm going to kill myself to save you. Even more unjust. God creates you in your weakness where you commit actions which is not up to the standard, and then God saves you by killing himself, punishing himself. Does it make sense to you? That's why I'm saying religious traditions must be used and looked at properly, and then say, look, what is the concept of God? What is the concept of sin and salvation? What is the concept of heaven and hell? Is there justice there, or is it just like everyone goes to heaven? I'm not talking about your belief, or am I talking about your belief? I'm just talking about a religious tradition. Everyone goes to heaven, or everyone goes to hell?
So, can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course you can.
So, you just said that it's unfair, right, for someone else, other people to go to hell because of other people, right? Is that what you, as I understand it, you just said it's unfair?
I said you should not be punished for someone else's crime.
Right, okay. So is it fair? So according to Islamic tradition, in Sahih Muslim, Christians are going to be put in hell for the sake of Muslims. And
You've misunderstood. You can open up references like you always do. You misinterpret.
I've got it. It says Christians are going to be sent to hell on behalf of Muslims. It's there. The reference. Okay, I'll read it out.
Let's read and have a look.
Is that said in?
But even that, if you look at it, how can the Christians go to hell? Because of what?
To save
Someone else.
Save them.
Repeat what you just said before you.
said to save the
Let me
No. Repeat what you just said
On behalf
first.
of the Muslims, they will go. The Christians shall go to hell. You say.
Allah is going to put Christians in hell for the sake of Muslims.
What do you mean sake of?
Or
Explain.
Instead of Muslims.
No. Explain what do you mean instead of.
Are you saying instead of like
for
Muslims that have committed
No,
crimes?
you know what? Let me read it so that I'm not misquoting it.
So you've read it, but you don't remember. No problem.
No, I remember it. I'm saying that.
Please,
let me
please,
read
please.
it.
The text will be clear, right? So I want you to show me a text which has Arabic as well, so I can read the Arabic. Because very often we see here in the park, people have a translation which is also no. Translation doesn't do justice.
I didn't translate
It's not translated.
No. Translation doesn't do justice to the topic, because this is the baggage that we build in what it says. That's why I had to refer to the footnotes when I was chapter 112. This seeking eternal refuge means what? He's perfect, absolute, independent, because that's what the word means in Arabic language. They can't put all there, that's why they put it in the footnote, this is what it means. So even if you had something like this in a hadith, we will check the Arabic and then we can explain it to you what the hadith really means.
It's funny. I watched this all on YouTube, and I'm here now. Like, I'm the one like in between everything.
yeah.
It's all mad.
So while you're finding it, it is not fair to punish someone for someone else's crime. It will be unjust. God says He is not unjust in any way to His worshippers. He doesn't. Because otherwise you will say, look, how can I be punished for someone else's crime? So when we're talking about filtering the religion, look at the concept of God. So when you look at the Quran and it makes sense to you, and the Quran provides you additional evidence for itself, then you can be sure and you can have that conviction. Remember, we're talking about how can I be sure? How can I be sure with certainty that this is it? Because I can't just say otherwise. You're absolutely right. If you're not sure, then you cannot say you're wrong, you're this, you're bad. You can't say that. You can only say, once you're absolutely sure, that in my understanding of things, I think this is true, and based on that, this is not true and this is not correct, this is wrong.
So does the Quran say like if you don't follow Islam, or if you don't follow all the beliefs or teachings of Islam, does it say you should be punished?
Okay, so Islam says very clearly, Inna ad-deena 'inda Allah al-Islam. Surely the only acceptable religion or way of life is Islam, the sincere, pure submission to God. Okay? And whoever seeks any other way other than Islam, it will never be accepted of them. never be accepted of them. That means, according to the Islamic teaching, the only acceptable ideology, way of life, religion, is the one which is sincere, pure, humble submission to the one and only God. If you submit and surrender to something else, it will never be accepted. If you worship a phone or a man or a woman or a football star, whatever, it will never be accepted of it. God is not going to accept this because He created us for a purpose. If you don't fulfill the purpose, then we'll have to meet the consequence.
So of the Muslim population, would you say a sizable amount of the Muslim population are Muslims because of their family or their upbringing?
That's most religions. That's common to most religions.
I'd
People
say
are
that.
born into a family.
Yeah, so I'd say that. So
Yeah.
if I'm not brought up in a Islamic household, I'm not taught those values growing up, how can I be expected to? And I'm 19 years of age now. I have my own outlook on the world, and they might conflict with some.
It depends now who we're talking about. If it's you, for example, excuse me, you have the whole world at your doorstep or at your fingertips. You are constantly watching on social media, Twitter, Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, whatever, right? The whole world, information-wise, it's at your fingertips. That means that means if you used your intellect, you should have used and say, look, there are more than 1/4 of the world's population who believes in one God. Why? Did you ask? They believe in one God, which makes sense to me. They don't believe in 3 in 1 gods, or they don't believe in multiple gods, or they don't believe in idols. So
a lot of people do believe that.
no, I'm saying when you yourself were to ask these questions, you using your intellect will then be coming to a point where you will not have an excuse saying, oh, I didn't know, no one told me, because the information is now bombarded to you from everywhere. Look, you came to Speaker's Corner, guess what happened? You came to Speaker's Corner, information came to you. You didn't come to the information came to you from us. Information has always been passed on to us, whether we've been bombarded with information passively or actively.
Okay,
always.
I understand what you're saying.
But if he was a 90-year-old woman or a man in a home who have no information because she or he doesn't look into the internet or have access to a library, doesn't have a copy of the Quran and so on, it's totally different. Because how much of the information did they have access to? You can only be judged with the information that you've been accessible to you yourself. Like we said about the intellect is also there. So if that individual using the intellect realize I can't worship a tree or a monkey or an elephant or a human being, or God is a trinity, whatever, then you already see that these people in the day of judgment they'll be in a positive light. Why? Because they are coming closer to the understanding of who God is. That's how much the intellect can arrive to. Your intellect cannot come to the conclusion about that God is this, everything. There's a limitation of intellect. There's a role that intellect can play, but it cannot answer all your questions. Yeah? But intellect can then also, at the same time, reject many of these concepts about God. Yeah? So it might not affirm all of them, but it can reject a lot of those false concepts of God. That's where then when you look at the revelation will confirm your intellectual thinking, intellectual guidance, and then say, yep, I accept, I submit, I surrender. Because you are the only one worthy of worship, no one else. That's why the process of accepting Islam in our tradition, do you know what it is? The first one is of negation. You have to negate, it's nothing worthy of worship. La ilaha. Unconditional, that's it. There's nothing worthy of worship. So imagine everything, like nothing. Man, woman, tree, flag, nation, pop star, football star, celebrities, nothing worthy of worship. And then you affirm, but the one and only true God. That's the process of accepting Islam. So there is this role where intellect and the guidance plays hand in hand. No wonder God didn't just leave with our intellect only. He sent prophets and messengers and gave them guidance too in the form of scriptures.
Okay, but the thing is, you're saying that you're basically saying that everyone's intellect, if they're exposed to the teachings of the Quran, everyone's intellect should automatically think that's That's
I didn't say everyone. I said the sound intellect. Sound.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sound intellect. Or so if I consider myself someone who has sound intellect, my intellect should automatically tell me that this.
You can ask yourself.
My point is this: you were brought up, or I don't know if a lot of the Muslims on this earth today were brought up in a Muslim family, they were brought up
Believing.
yeah, being taught those values their whole life. I've been brought up maybe being taught different values my whole life. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm not individual with sound intellect, but my sound intellect might still tell me that everything in the Quran is not correct and is not something I should follow. So how do you
Just to expand on this, say someone who worships an idol and says, look, I use my intellect all the time. That's why I got a good job, got a good friend or a husband or a wife, and I have all this properties and money and successful. They'll say I'm using the intellect. But using the intellect soundly in the matters of the reality, in the matters of your belief about Creator and so on, have they been using it? This is what we demonstrate here, that that's not the case. Yeah? If someone is really sincere, truth-loving, and uses the intellect properly, even though they worship an idol, after discussion and understanding and reflection, they will say, yeah, it makes sense. Why they will say that? Because that's the sign of the sound intellect. You will see many people, they will say, yes, it makes sense not to worship an idol, but this is my religious tradition. Or I try to focus on it because I can't imagine God in any other way, so I have to concentrate on something. It's a focus point. So they're trying to justify it. But if you really delve into it, any belief system which is not in congruence or in conformity or in harmony with the true belief system, your intellect will reject it. Polytheism, tritheism.
There's so many people many people that believe so many other things then, isn't
So
there?
you're basically saying, why is our truth more truthful than someone else?
Because
I mean, what proves us more than everyone else? Why?
Basically, I'm like, I don't.
That's the question
I don't understand the idea that of someone. So what if I don't have sound intellect? What if I'm someone that's if under your belief?
Very good question. Very good question. No, very good question. Very good question. So if your intellect is somehow incapacitated, meaning you don't have the ability.
So are you basically saying everyone?
No. You have to hear me out. Warren. Either someone is totally unable to use their intellect. There are many people like that. Okay? It could be a medical condition, for example. If you're unable to, then you are not accountable. If you're totally insane, clearly you cannot use your reason whatsoever, you are not accountable. There are many people in the Islamic tradition understanding of things, the pen has been lifted. They cannot be accountable because they are not able to use their reason and intellect. But the difference is, if you have a person who has the ability but does not use it, they will be questioned on why did you not use it? Did they not come to you? And they will say, yeah, but we didn't use our intellect. Then they will have no excuse. Because if you had the ability to use your reason and you do not use it, you will be held accountable for that. Because if you had used it, you would not have believed in such and such and ended up in such and such worse destination. That is the Quranic teaching. If you have the ability and you haven't used it, then you are accountable for it. Because God didn't give you a brain just to find who's the best beautiful girlfriend or a wife, and that's it. There is a higher purpose of our mind, to find out the reason why here we are in this cosmos. Because I may not have been here in this reality. There are millions and billions of people. Why me as well? Does it matter if I didn't exist? Nothing will change if I didn't exist. But why am I independently existing? Because I am important in God's creation. I have a reason why I'm here. That means I need to find out why am I here, where I came from and where am I going. If I didn't use my intellect for doing this, then I cannot have an excuse in the day of judgment saying, well, I was too busy with my studies and with my work, with my pastime, with my football, with my soap operas, whatever. It will not be an acceptable excuse.
Okay, but the thing is, so so if I'm brought up with my father is teaching me this is the way to live your life. This is how people live, and that's based on Christianity, or that's based on nothing. That's just based on his experiences in the world. And then at the age of 30 years old or so, or at my age, someone shows me a Quran, and that conflicts. What's in the Quran
what you were taught.
is conflicts with what I'm taught. How am I to if my intellect is formed by my upbringing and formed by what I've been taught my whole life, and that's what I see as logic. How can I then read the Quran suddenly
it's not a sudden process.
This is right. This is
Yeah,
right. And
so it's not a sudden process. That's why the Quran tells us the importance of, from the changing of societies and understanding of how people learn and educate themselves. So Islam has a very much importance on education from the very young, where people are not conditioned to be totally brainwashed and that's it, you can't think. It makes people critical thinkers, and that's why if you look at Islamic tradition in the past, it generated generations of critical thinkers, scientists, social scientists, philosophers, biologists, astronomers, and they contributed to the world knowledge and civilization and technology. I mean, many of the stars' names are given by Islamic civilization astronomers. Why so? Because they didn't just stop there. They used their mind and looked in the horizons and look at the world that God has created. They did not occupy themselves with this small life and let me just go to work and come back to work and Saturday and Sunday just drink myself off and then wake up on Monday and then Monday evening a little bit okay, Tuesday much better, and Friday and like a cycle of slavery and servitude to this machinery of economics. No, Islam encourages people to develop, to grow, to perfect, to uplift their character. That's why one of the reasons the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet who brought this Quran, he said he was raised لِأُتِمِّمَ مَكَارِمُ الْأَخْلَاقِ. He was raised to perfect the nobility of character. You see? So you have a noble character. You're not someone born in debt, born doomed to die because someone else did something, but you are then to carry on developing, progressing, and